Today's lesson will be very short. You'll do a similar maze that you should have completed yesterday on one-step and two-step equations. But today we're going to focus on multi-step equations. And if you could, take you a sheet of paper because you may need it to show your work. You may write too big to fit in those boxes. But if you get you a separate notebook paper from the back shelf, you'll be able to write down these steps. So these are the steps that you need to follow in order to solve these equations. So write them down. The first thing you have to do to solve multi-step equations is to distribute. After you distribute by multiplying, you'll look to see if there are any like terms that you need to combine. After you do that, you'll do the third step, which is to move variables to the same side. Some of the multi-step equations have variables on the left and the right. So on the third step, you're going to be trying to get all the variables to be on one side of the equation. Either you decide to put the variables on the left side. That's what I normally do. I try to move the variables to the left, but you could move the variables to the right. So it doesn't matter which side you move it on. It just needs to be on one side together. So all the variables should be together on one side of the equations. And then when you get down to this fourth step, you should either have a two-step or a one-step equation. And so from there, being that we've just went over solving one-step and two-step equations, you should be able to solve those. So really, the multi-step equation is not as difficult as we make them out to be, because there's only 4 steps that you have to follow. And if you're good with following steps and you just do one thing at a time, I don't think you'll have any problems with solving these. So just like yesterday, I'm going to get you guys started. So we're using this maze to help us solve through these. And again, you would not have to solve every single one of these. If you were completing this correctly, you may only have 10 or 12 to solve. So we draw the line where the equal sign is, and we're going to go through the steps. The first step, if you remember, says to distribute. Well, in order to distribute, you have to have a number in front of parentheses. Well, in this equation that we're starting out with, there are no parentheses, so I know there's nothing to distribute on the left or the right side. So I'm going to mark the left and the right side so you know which side I'm referring to. All right, so then we move down to the next step. It says to combine like terms. Do you guys remember what like terms look like? That means they have something in common. And in order for them to be like terms, they must be on the same side of the equation. If you look on the left side, there's only one thing there. So there's nothing here that you can combine. But if you look on the right side, there are 2. You see, and both of them have a variable x. So that's what makes them like terms. We can put these 2 together by taking -4 minus 6, and they come together to make out a -10x. Okay? And then, of course, we bring down what we did not mess with. All right, so now from there, we're going to move on to see if there's variables on both sides of the equation. Well, there isn't. If you look on the left side, there's only just a number. You look on the right side, there's just that variable. So the variable is already on one side of the equation, which is the right side of the equation, and that's okay. So now we're down to that final step where you have to either solve a one-step or a two-step equation. Now, if you look at this is just a one-step equation, and you solve it by dividing by -10. And when you do that, you get your answer, which is +2. So again, we should see the answer adjacent to the box, and that lets us know which direction to move. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and do another one. I may do 3. So you draw your line where the equal sign is. We're going through our steps. Okay, let's label the left side and the right side. All right? So we look to see if you have to distribute. Again, on the left side, I don't see any parentheses, so there's nothing to distribute here. You would see parentheses when you have to distribute. On the right side, same thing, so there's nothing to distribute on this one. Okay, so we move on down to combining like terms. If I look on the left side, there's nothing on this side that are alike because this has a variable p and that one does not, so they are not like terms. So I can't combine like terms on the left side. If I look on the right side, same thing. This has a variable p, that one does not, so I can't combine them like I did on the last problem. So then I move down to the third step where I look to see if I have variables on both sides, and I do. And so I normally like to choose to move the one that is on the right side to be with the one that's on the left side. And you see how I'm doing that? To get rid of that 8p, I just do the opposite, which is subtract 8p. So we're doing that same idea of solving equations even when we're moving the variables to one side. So that's going to get rid of the variable on the right side. So the only thing I will be left with is a 4. And then on the left side, I have to actually type this in, 5 minus 8. You'll get negative 3p. And make sure that I bring down the subtract 14. And you see how we are left with the two-step equation now. So now we solve the two-step equation. You solve it by first adding 14 on both sides. You get negative 3p equals 18. And then we have a one-step equation. We solve it by dividing by negative 3. And you get p equals negative 6. And I see the answer right here. So I'm going to move in this direction. I'm going to do one more because this one actually shows me one where you would have to distribute. So I draw the line where the equal sign is, label my left side and my right side. And I notice on the right side I do have parentheses. So that lets me know that I do have something to distribute. And just in case we don't see what it is, we put those understood ones to help us. So when we distribute, remember we're multiplying. So that means take negative 1 times 1, you get negative 1x. Take negative 1 times positive 4, you get negative 4. And then everything else is brought down. Okay, so we've distributed. We don't have any like terms on either the left or the right side. We don't have variables on both sides. So we don't have variables on the left side, on the right side, sorry. So that's okay. So now we're down to the fourth step, which is to solve this two-step equation. And you solve it first by adding 4. You get negative 1x equals negative 4. And now we have a one-step equation. You solve it by dividing by negative 1. You get x equals 4, which means we'll move in this direction. Okay? All right, so I've done 3 problems with you just to get you started, but there's a quizzes that I'm going to create similar to yesterday that's going to guide you step by step through the steps to solving these. Okay, so make sure that you're not just clicking the answers on quizzes because it's showing you how to solve it on your paper. So that means you should be following along and writing down what you see on quizzes so that you'll have your maze completed.